Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to Serious Privacy, powered by TrustArc. Here are your hosts, Dr. Kay Royal and Paul Breitbart.
At the end of last year, a new manual for chief privacy officers and data protection officers, and basically anyone with a similar job title and interest, was released, the Privacy Leader Compass. Following a similar manual for CISOs, this book provides all that privacy leaders need to know to develop and maintain their privacy or data protection compliance program. And the authors of the book are with us today, Dr. Valerie Lyons and Todd Fitzgerald. Valerie is based out of Dublin and has extensive experience in both privacy and cybersecurity, and is currently the COO of BH Consulting. Todd is based in Milwaukee and mainly has a security background, working with various Fortune 500 companies. And we look forward for you to listen to the interview that I had with them in this episode. Kay unfortunately could not join the interview, so we'll start off the episode, the two of us, and then you'll get the interview. My name is Paul Breitbart.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. So let's be honest, I missed the interview because work was exploding and I seem to be losing control of my calendar. Does anybody else out there have that problem?
Quite a few people, and usually they hire a personal assistant to manage their calendars.
Feedback on from any teams when I send out anonymous surveys to see, what can I do better? What do I need to improve? What am I doing right? What do I need to do more of? All of that. The one comment I always get is you need a personal assistant.
Yeah, I think that is maybe right.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I have one now, but she also supports other people as well. So we'll see. But I really wish I'd been in on the interview. Fascinating conversation with these two. I'm very excited to be able to share it with everybody out there. They can benefit from this. So let's do our kickoff, which means the unexpected question. So I have a really interesting one this time. Pulled up randomly when we started. Looking back at when you were younger, what was your silliest fear?
Define younger.
Right, because mine is still here.
Ooh, probably monsters under the bed like everybody, but...
That's good.
I'm sure I had a phase where I was scared of monsters under the bed, but I typically try to forget things that I'm scared of. I mean, I still have a fear of heights.
Okay.
I can do mountains if I look straight ahead. If I have to look straight down, then it doesn't work.
I have that too. I love doing things that are up high, but I have I get really dizzy when I look down. So the spinning kind of thing, it's not that I'm scared. It's that my brain goes wonky. I'm scared of the dark. And there's a name for it. It's called nyctophobia. Of course, I started when I was a child, and it's very, very common in children. But I have an incredible fear of the dark. Now, it's not dark like nighttime, like walking at night outside. I'm good with that. It's not, going to sleep at night with the lights off. I can't stand the night light. That's fine. It's utter darkness, like when you're somewhere and all of a sudden the power goes out. Oh, I'm going into panic mode. I can't breathe. I can't do anything. It's interesting. So when I looked up, because I know it's called nyctophobia, but I looked up to see how to spell nyctophobia, and it came across a very rare phobia called arachibutyrosphobia. Arachibutyrosphobia? I don't even know how to spell it. It's a very, very rare phobia. It's the rarest, and it involves the fear of getting peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth. Very rare phobia.
I'm sorry if you have that and I just laughed at you. That was not my intention, but No, I have not
It's
heard of
rare
this
and
one.
it's very odd, right? So
Yeah.
I'm very glad I don't have that because I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That would
Yeah.
really stink.
Oh, yes, it would. A
So
friend of mine has trypophobia. Do you know what that is?
tryptophobia.
Trypophobia.
No.
That is an aversion to the sight of repetitive patterns.
Ooh.
So if you have a wall that consists of all kinds of triangles or circles or things like that, she can't do that.
Oh, wow. And see, mine is the one that I'd look at it and one of the circles would not be printed right.
Yeah, that's just OCD.
Anyway, we haven't been talking about privacy yet. We've been talking about a lot of private things. So for this week, for news, wasn't a lot that happened. So I think Paul and I already covered that New Hampshire signed their laws. So New Hampshire now has an omnibus privacy law. So you have that. We also talked about the mother of all breaches. There's more news coming out about the mother of all breaches and those 26 billion records. So there's news gaining with that. What else happened this week, Paul?
Well, Uber received a fine in the Netherlands that is
Yes, they
already
did.
highly criticized. It's 10 million euros, which is, I believe, the highest fine that the Dutch DPA has imposed. In any case, it's serious money. They calculated global turnover based on the turnover of Uber Technologies Incorporated because the Dutch entity is a subsidiary of the global companies. So they said, well, the maximum threshold is 1.16 billion euros that we can impose a fine on.
So be glad we're only going to pose 10.
Exactly, 10 million and not 10 billion. So
right.
It's still a big amount for
it is.
Relatively small contraventions, I would say, especially given that almost everything that Uber was accused of also has been corrected in the interim. So
we talked about that before, about companies that correct before the penalty comes out. They're still penalized for the behavior they did.
Yeah, and that I understand, but at least in my view, the cooperation and the changes made has not been taken sufficiently into account in the fine. So I do expect, actually, Uber has appealed the fine. I do expect that the courts will bring down the money that they will have to pay as part of this sanction. But we're going to see. It was mainly on the driver's app. So this was partly instigated by the Dutch DPA themselves, partly based on complaints that were received by the French DPA and forwarded to the Dutch by drivers, that it was very hard to go to their privacy settings, to apply a right to be forgotten request. Data retention was too long. So those kind of things. And I don't want to say these are not serious issues, but when reading through the report and also looking at Uber's response and what they have done, it doesn't completely feel right to me.
Okay. Right. Feels like they need to do more, or they didn't.
No, it feels like the Dutch DPA is suddenly too harsh.
Ah, got it. Well, how do we have them balance? They go overboard on some, they don't go as far on some. So there needs to be a balance there. Maybe it's the personalities there, right?
No comment. But it can be that also we just need some more case law in the Netherlands on how the fine works and also how the fining guidelines work. And by the way, for those who missed it, the fining guidelines from 2019 in the Netherlands have been silently replaced by a new version in 2023. So much for transparent communication.
Exactly. And there's a lot of news that have come up. We're not going to discuss a lot of it in detail. It might just be the highlights, like there's lawsuits against TikTok alleging that they violate the Biometric Information Privacy Act in Illinois, which is it is the first biometric law in the United States, and they set the standard. So lawsuits are claiming that TikTok violates that. There is apparently an effort to try to revoke here in the U.S., the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission cybersecurity rule, and the White House says they will veto that. So that's really interesting. You hear they have the right to veto. You don't see it often because a veto can be overridden by 2/3 of a vote. So you don't actually see a lot of vetoes through the White House. So that's interesting. New Zealand has a privacy impact assessment toolkit. I've looked at it. It's pretty cool. You might want to use that if you're looking at doing privacy impact assessments, don't know how. Their toolkit is actually really good. South Korea Personal Information Protection Commission announced the creation of a policy plan for behavioral advertising. It mandates that all data processing of online information for customized advertising must respect the user's right to consent to further processing of their data at each stage. IAPP has a great story on that, so check that out. There is potentially a data breach in Canada. There were internal systems. They were left vulnerable. Could have been, it was between late December, late January, compromised of a VPN. It came out on CBC News report. The drives contain the employees' personal information and classified information on the other. Don't know if the classified information was accessed, but they are investigating and looking at that. So Canada is not immune, people. I know everybody seems to think Canada doesn't have privacy laws and doesn't have issues. Everything in Canada is fabulous. It is, but they do have privacy laws. They do have breaches. There is a few more on this side, but I wanted to go, you were mentioning the fine in Europe. There was also a Keneal fine that was on a data broker. So they issued a fine on Tagada Media, Tagada. Tagada Media, 75,000 euros for violating the GDPR. They collected data without consent due to the misleading appearance of their forms. Mm-hmm. And I think they also fined Amazon? Was it French? The French
That
Keneal?
was also the French, yes, for illegal employee oversight.
Yes.
You may be aware that the warehouse pickers in Amazon have these scanners where they need to scan every item, put it in boxes, and then leave the boxes somewhere to be packaged and sent out, and then start all over again. So it's really picking from stock. And those scanners are used for employee monitoring. So if you don't scan fast enough, or if you are idle for too long, and all of that is captured. And
a little overboard there.
It is a little overboard.
Well,
yes.
And I'll kind of end on this one. We have a few more. There's concerns in Hong Kong about food delivery apps. But this was something that your friend put out, the European Data Protection Supervisor, made a comment about the regulations to prevent human trafficking and migrant. He said they are very necessary regulations. It's a very, very important and sensitive issue. However, they haven't done a privacy impact assessment.
And they should.
And he said it's very concerning. And that's true that we've discussed several regulations that are put in for a good reason, but someone doesn't think too far about what the implications should be. The CJEU also rules that the police should not indefinitely store biometric data. This is very reminiscent of New York storing biometric data. They get it, they store it forever because they want to be able to run future cases against it and help them. And no, it's not indefinite. You don't get to do that.
It's nice to know instead of need to have.
Exactly.
Well, with that, I think we'll go to the interview, because otherwise we will not we won't stick to our promise for this episode.
We're not going to stick to it.
We'll keep it nice and short. Let's go to the interview that I had some time ago with Todd and Valerie to talk about the Privacy Leader Compass. It is a fascinating book. It's out wherever you get your books, both in hard copy and in ebook. So let's listen in. Valerie, Todd, thank you so much for being with us this week. I read the book. I contributed to the book. You were so kind to invite me to be one of the, I believe, 60 people who wrote a one-pager to also give some real life experiences in addition to all of your experiences. And it is an amazing book for everybody who wants to work in privacy and data protection. I know, Todd, you already worked on the CISO Compass some time ago. What made you think, hey, we also need a privacy compass?
Well, I think that thank you very much for having us, Paul. And I think that the success of the CISO Compass, where it was targeted at chief information security officers, using the McKinsey 7S model as a way to structure what needed to be done in organizations. When we were looking at that, we said, wouldn't it be great to target this towards the privacy officers? Because security and privacy are so related to each other, different disciplines, but they both need that kind of structure and that road to be able to facilitate the programs in a great way. And so we used a very similar model to that and then, had the experience of the 60 other people. But what differentiates this from other things that we've seen is it's not just a collection of stories. It's actually a roadmap that's very structured and then amplified by the stories of people like yourself that are experts in the field.
That sounds amazing. So Valerie, can you talk a bit what the added value is of this McKinsey 7S model?
It's a great question, Paul. Why use a model to begin with? Why not just talk about privacy leadership? And I think, first of all, the model had been applied successfully in the CISO Compass, but why bother even using it in the CISO Compass? And I think Todd would agree with me when I say that really many of the books out there that can be a bit jumpy. What the CISO Compass did was it by using and leveraging a model, which is very much an academic thing to do, to leverage a time-tested model in one discipline and apply it in another discipline to provide structure. So it was to take away the jumpiness and to provide structure to actually the writing and to the communication, and to make sure that you create a comprehensive framework by using a structure. In other words, you tick all the boxes essentially by using another structure. But it is very much a process that's sort of routine in the academic circles, that you take models and theories from one discipline and you apply it in another. And that's your contribution, or what's called your contribution, is to take something out of one context, apply it to another successfully. So it was applied successfully in the CISO Compass, very successfully. In fact, it was that book, which was written by Todd, was a bestseller and a Canon Award winner, I believe, Todd, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Each of the last 5 years, it was the number one best-selling cybersecurity book. And so it did very well from Taylor and Francis. And so applying that model, and I think, what's important about, when we use these different things, if we look at like the iPhone, for example, or the iPod, that Apple didn't invent portable music. They just made it a lot better, and they made it easier for people to have around. And so we were looking at, how can we make our programs better? And the goal was, how do we know that the chief security officer with the CISO Compass, how do we know that they're doing all the things that they need to do and their teams to have an effective security program? And so we did that with the privacy leadership, and use the same McKinsey model, which is a time-tested model around organizational effectiveness. And so, to give just a quick brief history of, what is this? Yeah, what is this McKinsey 7S model? What was happening, and this goes back to 1980, is that McKinsey consultants were going out to companies and saying, well, if you get the structure of your organization right, you will achieve your strategy. And these two analysts, Tom Peters, who's a well-respected management guru, and George Waterman, got together and said, no, there's actually 7 things that an organization needs to get right to be able to achieve their strategy. So to achieve the strategy, and they called it the 7S, and they started all with the letter S. You need to have the structure of your organization right. You need to have the right systems in place. And those aren't necessarily IT systems, but processes and routines that think of the business processes that a company uses to make things right. What's the style of your leadership? How do you interact with the board and executive leadership? How do you reward your staff with compensation and morale, the soft sort of things? What sort of skills do you have in your organization? And then what are the shared values within the organization that you have, the glue that brings everything together? And when you put all that together, each one of those 7 S's is equally important. And if you don't have all of them, you're not going to achieve your strategy. For example, if you don't have the right skills within your organization, or using some external skills, you may have a very nice strategy written on paper, but you're not going to achieve it. And likewise, if you don't have the right systems in place. And so that's how the whole book is structured around each of those different things. And we looked at those different components and said, where is, what needs to be done for privacy leadership in our teams in each of those different areas.
That's fascinating. And I know that there are many compliance frameworks out there. I mean, I contributed during my NIMITY days to the Privacy Management Accountability Framework that you also reference in the book. So I take it that when you do take the McKinsey 7S approach, you can still combine it content-wise with any of the privacy frameworks that are out there, whether that is the NIMITY framework or NIST or just the privacy principles from the GDPR.
Absolutely. And those fit into different places. So for example, in the systems area, that's where we talk about the different frameworks, the privacy frameworks, because it's really a system for privacy leaders to accomplish the mission. That's one of the systems. And we have, contributors in the book, such as the person who led the development of the NIST privacy framework also contributed the perspective around the NIST privacy framework in there.
And I think as well, it's kind of, we didn't want it to be a framework that was just going to be compliance based. Very much my background, my PhD, everything to do with sort of my brand is about, doing privacy right, not doing privacy rights. So it wasn't ever just about writing a book that was going to hash out another framework. It's not just another framework. It is actually a framework that encompasses much more than the data privacy principles or the standard legislation. It's legislation agnostic. It's location agnostic. It's intended to provide a comprehensive lens on looking at all aspects of privacy. So you'll see that we cover things that you'll very rarely see in a privacy framework, which are the models and theories of privacy, because we want people to understand privacy. You'll also see that we cover ethics and privacy and ethics. And that's not covered in NIST and it's not covered in GDPR. You'll see also there's privacy as a CSO and part of the ESG suite. That's also not covered. So we move beyond sort of the standard frameworks because it isn't meant to be that kind of a framework. It's meant to be for the privacy leader to provide them with a roadmap to say that they've looked at everything and all aspects of privacy, not just legislative compliance, governance-based ones.
So would it be fair to say that the book is much more business-minded than legal-minded and actually also supporting the privacy leader in again, helping their business colleagues in getting things done in a compliant way, but also in a way that actually supports the business?
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, in the title of the book, the subtitle is a comprehensive business-oriented roadmap for building and leading practical privacy programs. And in that text, you're putting the book together. Is each one of those words is very intentional because it is a roadmap. And we did want it to be practical and wanted to give that practical, actionable advice. Not, it has theory in there, but we also want to get it into I now have this role of a chief privacy officer or a DPO, or I'm on a privacy team. What is it I need to do within my organization? So it does bring it into that business orientation.
And I think if we think about many of the privacy leaders, so often when you talk about CPOs, you're talking about people with a very, very robust legal background. But many DPOs tend to come from the business. So they're very business background individuals. So it's written for the purpose of reaching a huge audience, a wide audience, privacy leaders. And right from the get-go, we say that this is, the privacy leader can be the CISO, they can be the CPO, they can be the DPO, they can be the CFO. There's so many individuals that can be responsible for privacy that a business-oriented roadmap is going to be one that can be digestible by all of them. That's not to say we haven't overlooked the legislative side. It's in there. It has a whole chapter. But, looking after the legislative piece is part of the privacy leader's job. And there's so many other aspects, which we also go into beyond just the business element, but how to lead. That's part of your privacy leader's role as well. So we talk about a number of different aspects that aren't specific to privacy, but are specific to the privacy leader.
So anybody who is expecting yet another book that says, well, in Article 30 of GDPR, it says that you need to maintain a register, and Article 35 says you need to do DPIAs. Yes, it's mentioned, but it's not your step-by-step going through the GDPR article by article handbook. It is really much more and much more, as you said, legislative agnostic.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how do you write a book like this? I've always wondered, if two people write a book, where do you start and how do you make sure that you find the same tone of voice and the same words? I mean, Irish English, American English, that's already a difference. What spelling do you use? Where do you start?
I can say for me that I think if you're going to co-write, you have to find somebody that writes to the same quality that you write, that you have to find somebody that writes the same, not exactly the same style, but with the same approach to writing. In other words, I knew from reading Todd's CISO Compass that he was very comprehensive, very much referencing, sourcing, books that could be used both in industry and in academia. And that was who I wanted to work with. That was the kind of writer that I wanted to work with. So I think we matched in that regard. And I think we both knew that our writing styles would be quite similar, because Todd would have seen a lot of my writing and I would certainly seen a lot of Todd's from when I was in the CISO community. So I think you have to have that starting point to be a co-author. Otherwise it looks like, disparate chapters. And actually you see that often in co-authors where there's two completely different writing styles and the book looks broken into two sections as a result. So I don't know what you think, Todd, but that would certainly be.
Well, I think you just have to convert all the Irish English into American English and you're fine. No, I think we work very well together, in bringing the book together and doing different pieces of it. And obviously each of us, experienced in different aspects of this, but putting it together, I think we really had a really good relationship with that, as to, what needed to be added in there. And I think, with my, prior books as well, I had some, I had a thinking of how things should be organized. Valerie, had done a lot of work, with her PhD and writing before. And I think, the quality, I think Valerie said it very, very well, is that we match very well in the level of writing. Because really the writing wasn't for us. The writing has to be for the person who's going to read it. And so it's always having that lens when you're writing a book like this is, thinking of that person who's sitting down and reading it, and are they going to get something out of it? And that was always the thinking that both of us had all the way through this process.
So I guess it took quite a bit of time. I mean, this is not a thin book. This is not just 100 pages that you leaf through. This is quite a significant effort also to get it done. And then you've also reached out to 60-something privacy experts from around the world. I know you've done the same for the CISO Compass. How did you come up with that idea and why do it again?
Well, I tell you, it actually started, I have to go back into 2006, when I wrote my first book, which was CISO Leadership Skills, The Essential Principles for Success. And I thought we should have a book that coming together of some experts. And it was in the book was a good book, but it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And we took the approach of having different people write different chapters. I did the research on the topics that needed to be covered. And then we assembled some experts that were leading security at that time and put that book together. But what it lacked was the one voice. It lacked a consistent approach through it. And for years, I always thought this needs to be different. And so with the CISO Compass, I took control of that and wrote the book, and then, brought in the different viewpoints and fit those in where they made sense. And so it was doing that I think was important. And that's what we did with the Privacy Leader Compass, is reached out to people in the field that we knew were experts in the field. We knew a lot of those experts. Some of them we didn't know that we brought on board. And we're proud to say that this book, we have contributors from 15 different countries and people that are driving the privacy conversation around the world. And so, I think that's just so much more powerful to have in a book.
And I think it's important to say, while it's pioneers really in privacy, they're not just in privacy. So one of the big things I wanted was to reach, and we had agreed this up front, Todd and myself, that it would be global, that we wanted to reach both academic and industry pioneers. So on both sides, you'll see that there's a number of really incredible academics and really incredible industry experts, but they're also from all aspects. That's privacy, AI governance, trust, risk, policy and government, data protection, privacy commissioners. So they're right across the board in terms of who they work for and whether they're in industry or whether they're in academia. So we really wanted to reach a broad audience of
also a whole range of ages.
Whole range,
Yeah.
absolutely. And actually very diverse. If you look, you'll see this huge diversity right across. But I think that's reflective of the industry. I think privacy is a much more diverse industry than, say, cybersecurity, which would be very lacking in diversity, particularly gender diversity. So privacy would, in my view anyway, even if you go to a conference, you'll see that at a privacy conference, there's a huge number of diverse members of the community and very much balanced gender. So you don't often see that in cybersecurity conferences. It's getting better, but you don't often see it.
No, I think that's true. And indeed, I think one of the reasons why the privacy community is so much fun is because it is so diverse, with so many people that are not scared to speak out, different age groups, different cultural backgrounds, different academic backgrounds, indeed, not just lawyers, but cultural anthropologists and technologists and everything in between. And all those different perspectives, I think, have always been why we are such a strong community and such a friendly community.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And I definitely see that too. I spend most of my time in the cybersecurity community, and it is, as you say, getting better, but it's not like the privacy community. I think is just, I think it's fantastic.
That's always nice to hear, of course. So the book has been out since November. You did sort of a soft launch around the IAPP in Brussels, but the official launch was earlier this January in Dublin with a whole event. Can you talk a bit about that event and how the book was received there?
Well, we had an event. It was held at the Dogpatch Labs in Dublin, which is in the CHQ building, which is down in the basement, if you want to call it that. Very beautiful facility, over 200 years old. We stored tobacco and tea and, spirits in there. And it's, it's a startup working space up above. And that's where I spend part of my days. But the facility was fantastic. We had a great launch. We had a presentation for, about 35 minutes or so. And what I really loved about it is there was great buzz in the community. There was an excitement of delivering this book and bringing all the privacy people together. We had a really great event.
Yeah, I have to say it was wonderful. It was Todd said it was in Dogpatch Labs, and Kate Canary, who's the chair of IAPP in Ireland, she moderated it and she was fantastic. And then we had a reception before and afterwards, and it was a great energy, and a lot of privacy people were in attendance, I have to say. So yeah, I must say it was a great launch, and great to see how many people already had the book and brought it with them to be signed. So yeah, it's a good start to 2024.
I can only imagine. So Valerie, I think a lot of listeners last picked up when you mentioned the title of your PhD. Do privacy right, not privacy rights? I believe I have to ask, can you tell a bit more about that point of view as well?
So doing privacy right essentially is, as opposed to rights, is in changing the way we perceive privacy and data protection. So we're focusing all the time on privacy as the goal, data protection as the goal, when in fact it should be the baseline. And according to my thesis, the goal should instead be consumer trust. And so if we had that as the goal, we'd essentially build processes that were aimed at engendering or increasing consumer trust. You would achieve compliance by doing that, but you probably have to do more. And that is, what is the more that you'd have to do? So really, I was looking at the space, which is CSR and ESG, and seeing in that space, what would give most bang for your buck, essentially. Where would you get the best value in terms of consumer trust, and where would you get the least value, also more, just as equally important. So I was looking at privacy as a CSR, privacy as a corporate political activity, and privacy as a socio-political activity, and measuring those different activities and how much consumer trust they engender. So, obviously certain CSR activities will engender increased consumer trust. So for instance, if an organization is going to lobby for increased consumer trust for the consumer, it's going to generate increased consumer trust. Yeah, it goes without saying. But there are some places in the middle. If an organization is going to say, for instance, in its CSR report, we're delivering training for privacy to all our employees, that's compliance whitewashed CSR. And in that space, it doesn't engender the same level of consumer trust. So perhaps we need to focus more on those activities. We want to engender consumer trust. But the most important piece was, or at least I felt when that was the doing privacy right piece, is if we start to take the conversation away from talking about compliance at board level and instead talking about consumer trust at board level and how our consumers will trust us more, and trust equals increased purchase intention, trust equals decreased privacy concerns and increased loyalty, increased reputation, whole series of things that are associated with trust in the trust studies, then we could actually start a different conversation at board level, which is how privacy can make money. What the bottom line, that triple bottom line that's associated with CSR. Mm-hmm. And we can also get our audience to be the wider stakeholder community, not just consumers or regulators. We can reach a different community through CSR reports and corporate reports that these activities would normally be reported in. So that's essentially the tenet of what the research is about. And I'm not, it's not like the larger organizations, the Fortune 100 organizations have started looking at CSR and privacy together. They've started reporting CSR and privacy together.
Yeah, and then the fun begins. It's a topic that frequently also comes up in the podcast because Kay and I are also of the opinion that privacy can actually bring companies more value and bring in the money if you do it right and if you take the right approach. And I guess, Todd, you also wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Valerie's, done the research and looked at the top 100 companies and looked at their reports, and to see, what's interesting is, do companies line up with their activities with what they say that they're doing? And I think, consumers are pretty smart, and we make our own judgments, whether it's, based on the last transaction that we had with an organization, or how they treated us with their return policy, or, how did they handle the call, or did we have to wait on customer service for 45 minutes? We all take in all this information and we form our opinion about that organization. And I think it's fascinating. And I see in the technical space, a big focus on, digital trust and trusting the information systems that people are using today. And you see some organizations you work with, and you're interacting with their system, and then you look at what their vision is and everything, and it's totally different. So I think consumers are pretty smart, and I think companies would do well to really focus on privacy.
Agreed. So what's next? Will there be another compass in the series, or do you leave it at 2?
Well, that remains to be seen. I think, it's hard to leave something, this isn't this is my 5th book coming out, and I think that, but this is a second in a series, and it's hard to say, it's hard to stop, isn't it? After 2, it seems like you need to have at least 3.
Yes, I agree. Maybe the ESG leader would be very interesting.
It would. I don't know, Valerie, what are your thoughts?
I need a decade. I need a break. I did a PhD, and then I was no sooner finished that, then I began to co-author with Todd. There was a year and a half from start to finish after doing 5 years prior to that.
So the muscles are well trained.
And the good thing, it's like I've run a marathon and I'm taking a break. But
I can very well imagine.
I wouldn't say never. I'd just say not now.
Well, we are going to look forward, first of all, to the success of the Privacy Leader Compass. It's out both as a physical book and an ebook, wherever you want to get your books. But I would always suggest go to your local bookstore. And it is well worth the read. I draw a lot of inspiration from it, including from all of the stories from colleagues and friends in the broad privacy community. So thank you for sharing this book with us, and thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was such a good interview. I really hate that I wasn't there. And with that, Paul, bring us to a close.
Well, yes, thank you for listening to yet another episode of Serious Privacy. If you like the episodes, join the conversation on LinkedIn. You'll find us under Serious Privacy. You will find Kay on social media as Heart of Privacy and myself as Europol B. And if you have any guest suggestions, also don't hesitate to let us know. We are booking until the summer for interviews for Serious Privacy. Ideally recommended by friends, not by agencies. But who knows who comes up in the next couple of weeks. We have some great interviews already lined up. But for this week, thank you very much. Until next week, bye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No, That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.